And the immigration speech that landed to some with a Trump. CNN's Phil Mattingly has the latest on that.
A round of applause.
Tonight, Donald Trump facing high-profile Hispanic defections from his campaign after his fiery immigration speech. Texas pastor Ramiro Pena, a member of Trump's National Hispanic Advisory Council, in an email to Trump's staff obtained by Politico, saying it was, quote, difficult to imagine how I can continue to associate with the Trump campaign, and that the National Hispanic Advisory Council seems to be simply for optics, and I do not have the time or the energy for a scam. Alfonso Aguilar, who for months defended Trump in the media, also polling his support.
I was totally disappointed, not surprised, but disappointed and slightly misled because he gave the impression, and the campaign gave the impression till yesterday morning, that he was going to deal with the undocumented in a compassionate way.
Trump's 70-minute address in Arizona was cheered by his most ardent supporters, a pivot this he was not. But Republicans tonight are weighing whether a hardline stance will damage his campaign. Trump himself, in a radio interview, said he's actually softening.
Oh, they're softening. Look, we do it in a very humane way, and we're going to see with the people that are in the country. Obviously, I want to get the gang members out, the drug peddlers out.
Trump referring to his decision not to immediately deport all 11 million plus undocumented immigrants should he win the White House. But Trump's tough stance in Arizona was repeated Thursday in Ohio, a state Trump desperately needs to win.
Don't worry, we're going to build that wall. That wall will go up. It's going to go up.
A departure from the candidate that stood next to Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto just 24 hours earlier.
The bond between our two countries is deep and sincere.
A different tone, a different message, and a showing that advisors say proved he can straddle the lines of diplomacy and policy. Trump in Mexico said the issue of whether Mexico would pay for the border wall wasn't discussed.
We didn't discuss payment of the wall. That'll be for a later.
%. They don't know it yet, but they're going to pay for the wall.
All an issue Hillary Clinton's running mate Tim Kaine seized on Thursday.
That was a choke, and I think it shows that diplomacy is not for amateurs. Donald Trump's an amateur.
Phil Mattingly, CNN, Wilmington, Ohio.
Let's bring in our panel. Pro-Clinton Super PAC honcho Paul Begala. I don't know if that's his official title, but CNN political analyst Kirsten Powers also joins us. Trump supporter Kayleigh McEnany. Amanda Carpenter, former communications director for Senator Ted Cruz. Also Trump supporter and former South Carolina Lieutenant Governor Andre Bauer. Kirsten, let's start with you. It was interesting. I mean, last night's speech, it really seems like it was appealing to the base, and yet this is a time, it would seem, that he really needs to reach out to independent voters, others who might be on the fence.
Which is what it seemed like he was doing in the morning, right? That was really what you needed to do if you wanted to appeal to people who were a little uncomfortable with you, in particular about how you talk about Hispanics. And I don't just mean Hispanic people, but actually moderate white voters who are not on board with what is a pretty extreme position in terms of immigration, even in the Republican Party. So what you saw in the morning, I think, is what might have been helpful to him. But by evening, we saw the old Donald Trump back, really giving a speech that was so alarming that he lost some of his own Hispanic supporters today who had, were on the Trump train and said, we can't do this anymore.
Yeah, I mean, Kayleigh, as a Trump supporter, what do you make? Did you see two different Donald Trumps yesterday and these defections by people on his own Hispanic council?
I didn't see two different Trumps. I saw someone engaging in diplomacy on one hand with the Mexican president, and then someone speaking to a crowd, to a rally, a group of supporters who support him in the idea of building the wall. And I think Donald Trump accomplished a lot yesterday. Not only did he look like a diplomat and get the Mexican president to concede on, yes, I'll allow a barrier to go up. Yes, I'll renegotiate parts of NAFTA. Those are two huge points. He also reaffirmed his base that his top 10 steps are security oriented, and he put a face on security. When those parents stood up there and said, I lost a child to an illegal immigrant. If Donald Trump were my president, my child would be alive. He humanized an issue that is not humanizing to many people.
Clearly, though, to certainly a lot of Hispanic people on his own advisory council, it wasn't humanizing, it was demonizing. I mean, they left.
Well, we certainly hope that they'll come around, and I think the end of his speech was an important part because he said only after we accomplish these 10 steps will we then determine the disposition of those who remain. So that suggests to me there's not going to be what we've seen under the Obama administration, raiding people's homes and deporting families.
Andre, isn't part of the objective that he needs to do is to reach out to Hispanic voters in this country? If he can't even keep the people who are on his own Hispanic Advisory Council, what does that say about his potential to outreach?
Well, sometimes the closest to your vest are the hardest to keep happy. You know, I would go back and reference Reagan. When he met with Gorbachev, he didn't say we're going to tear down this wall. When he went to Germany, he said we're going to tear down this wall. Diplomacy wears different hats, and so does Trump. You know, I think he demonstrated he clearly has the ability to be presidential. He did it yesterday. But then when he's back on his home turf and talking to a crowd of voters, he explained clearly, why would you get into a debate with the president of Mexico right now as a candidate? It's not the time or the place. And it was more showing diplomacy, and we have places we can find common ground as two countries where it can be mutually beneficial, and unilaterally we can agree on it.
Amanda, is it diplomacy to you or being two-faced?
Here's the thing, and it's going to sound counterintuitive, but it is the lesson that we learned through the GOP primaries. Trump wins by failing, by flailing around on this issue. Listen, his immigration position is really not difficult to figure out. It's secure the border, fix the system, pass Gates' law, stop sanctuary cities, and he's being really cagey about the details on deportation, whether I give citizenship, whether I give legal status. He's being vague on that, but he likes this issue. He's talked about this issue throughout the whole campaign. He will do anything he can to stay focused on this issue. It keeps Hillary out of the media. She doesn't really want to talk about it. He can effectively paint her as purely in pro-amnesty. This is the only issue he can win on. So he wins by keeping it on this issue at any cost. I don't mean win the election, but he wins the media cycle, and that's all he cares about.
Paul, should Hillary Clinton be more out front right now? I mean, she did give a speech to veterans group, but she's been basically fundraising.
She did, and that will stand her in good stead once we get past Labor Day on Monday. No, there's an old Napoleonic maxim that Lee Atwater made famous among political consultants: never interrupt your opponent when he's destroying himself. And Hillary's been following that. Frankly, Trump had it exactly backwards in Mexico. I used to work, back before I was a hack, I worked in the White House. I was a top advisor to the President of the United States, and this is how diplomacy is supposed to work. Trump did it precisely backwards. Alone in the room is when you have to talk about the toughest things in private. Say, listen, this is what you're doing wrong. This is what I'm upset about with your country. And then in public, you don't knock the stuffings out of the guy in his country if you actually want to come to terms with him. He had it precisely backwards from a substantive governance point of view. Now, he'll never be governing, so I don't really worry about that. From a political point of view, his key constituency, and Hillary's, is college-educated white people. No Democrat has ever won them. President Obama got reelected comfortably, losing them. Hillary right now is winning them, narrowly, but she's winning them. He has to get them back. They cannot countenance a politician who they believe is racist or is being accused of racism. So these defections today, I thought speech was off the chain, as the kids say, but that doesn't matter what I think. These defections today probably hurt even worse than the speech. So college-educated white people watching your broadcast, and they're saying, wait, these are people who declared for Trump, and now they've pulled back because they don't like his tone. I think it was an enormous political disaster.
I mean, you have one of his top Hispanic advisors saying, I can't be involved in a scam.
Yeah, I mean, look, also you have to look at, there's a USA Today poll that's out today, and this would not have even captured what happened last night, and 2/3 of Hispanics are already voting for Hillary Clinton. And then you look at his so-called African-American outreach that he did in the last week, and in this poll, 90% of African-Americans say that they believe that Donald Trump is racist. Not just that they're not going to vote for him, but they think that he's racist. So I don't even know that we should even be talking anymore about him winning these voters over. I mean, he has allegedly made these, overtures to people that have actually alienated them.
I do think we've seen his numbers improve. It was 1% and 2%, and we love to tout that number on air, but then it went up to 8% in the latest poll, his support among the African-American community. So I think this direct outreach
is
in fact working. It was one of the latest that was out, the Economist YouGov poll. It was 8%. So that's a very good number. That's outpacing McCain. That's outpacing Romney at this point. I think this is going to be tremendous for him this weekend, going to Detroit, touring the inner city. Hillary Clinton was in the Hamptons all month, essentially, and in California. He's been on the ground in Louisiana helping flood victims.
That he's not actually talking to a congregation, that he's doing sort of a one-on-one interview with a pastor that's going to be, that all the questions are asked in advance and all his answers, according to the New York Times, or at least somebody from the campaign has suggested what his answers should be.
I don't think so, because I think he gets a broader audience going on a television show as opposed to speaking to a congregation. I have no doubts that he probably will speak to a congregation in the future, but he wants to reach a mass audience. And we know Donald Trump's not scripted. I mean, he's not someone who's avoiding the press. Hillary Clinton's 271 days out without a press conference. She has to have a script. Donald Trump does not. If he wants to make sure his answers are perfect, that's fine by me. He's not a scripted candidate.
We're going to pick up the conversation shortly, talk about new state-by-state polling numbers and what they say about Donald Trump's electoral road to the White House. Coming up next, Univision's Jorge Ramos and what he saw in yesterday's Mexico City summit and Phoenix immigration speech, as well as what he thinks Latino voters took away from it. Plus, we'll continue to bring you updates on Hurricane Hermine as it gets closer to Florida.